Hey everybody, so I hope you had a great break, and in this next session, I'm really glad to have my friend Philip VanDusen here. I met Philip in an online business group that we both attend, and he is just amazing with what he does with brands. He's worked with some of the biggest brands in the industry, okay? I'm sure he'll give you a quick little overview, but I am excited about this because I think a lot of people don't think about branding and making sure that your brand is consistent across not just your website, right, but other components. And your brand is more than just a logo, right? And Phil's going to go over all of that. So I'm really excited about this presentation. And without further ado, let's jump on in. And Phil, how you doing, Phil?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much, Joe. Let me well, anyway, just quickly before I start sharing my screen, I just want to thank everyone for showing up today, and thank you, Joe, for inviting me to speak at the RapidWeaver conference. And so with that, I'm going to start a slideshow and get going. All right, can everyone see the slide? I can't see any chat, so I'm just going to go ahead and act like everyone can hear me. Okay, cool. So anyway, Verhaal Brand Design is the name of my consultancy. And as I said, I'm navigating with two things at the same time. I'm going to talk about branding and design today. And just a little bit about me really quickly. As Joe said, my name is Philip VanDusen. I'm the principal of a brand consultancy called Verhaal Brand Design. And we do graphic design and branding and marketing, strategic brand building for everything from entrepreneurs to Fortune 100 clients. And I've had 20 years of experience plus in branding. 13 of those were in fashion retail. I've been the vice president of design at PepsiCo, at Old Navy, and I've been the executive creative director at a couple different global branding agencies. One called Landor Associates, one called Anthem Worldwide, working with a large range of clients, everything from entrepreneurs on up to the Chevrons and the Sonys and the PepsiCos of the world, everything from fashion to food to technology to healthcare to entertainment. And the one thing I wanted to say about those is that branding is absolutely the same no matter what you're doing it for, whether you're doing it for an entrepreneur or whether you're doing it for Coca-Cola. The principles and the methodologies are the same. It's really just a matter of scale. So everything I'm going to be sharing with you today are a lot of things that I've actually worked doing with some of these clients on. So let's go. So I'm going to share what I'm going to talk about today a little bit is what is brand design, or what I call brand design. And how does that affect, or what does that mean to a RapidWeaver user or designer? I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I call a brand ecosystem and 9 elements, design elements of a brand ecosystem. I'm then going to share one small case study of actually a speaker who spoke yesterday, a friend of mine, Jason Resnick. And then I'm going to talk about some trends in web design. So I'll jump right into it. This is an old cartoon from the New Yorker from way back at the dawn of the internet. And on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. And I love this cartoon because it says a lot about branding. On the internet, no one knows how big you are, how small you are, how professional you are, how much of an amateur you are. It's all about how you present yourself and what your web presence is, and what the perception of you and your company or your clients' companies is on the web. You can look as smart, as amateurish, as successful as you want to be, and it's all really a question of how good your branding is. So there's an old joke. It says an 800-pound gorilla walks into a room. Where does the gorilla sit? Well, the gorilla sits anywhere he wants to. So I'm going to show you how you can be the 800-pound gorilla of brand design and bring that either to your own design if you're working for your own websites or to your clients. Why is branding important? Well, there's 3 main reasons. One, it communicates absolutely everything. So it communicates what it is you do, who you are, how you do it, why you do it better than your competitors, why people should believe in you, and why they should come back to you. It also communicates just about everything about the perception of who you are and who your brand is. And then lastly, it really creates a reaction, so how people respond to it, but also it precipitates action. So your brand will either get them to click away or it will get them to follow and be interested and engage with you. Brand design is a lot more than a logo, as Joe said. And if brand design was just a logo, this would be a one-slide presentation. So it's really, everyone has a logo. And it takes a lot more than just a logo. And as we walk into the 9 design elements that make up a brand ecosystem, you'll see how much broader that is. Brand design, the way I define it, is it creates a perception. So it creates the perception of who your brand is online. It tells a story. So every brand, every company has a narrative. So your brand is really the vehicle for telling that story. It's strategic, so it must align with your business plan, with your brand's purpose, with its mission statement, and with your brand's personality and the trajectory of your business. It also creates a connection between what you do and your customer. And it establishes recognition. So it's your identity. Branding is the identity of your company, and it's how you show up across the range of brand touchpoints. I'll get in a little bit more about explaining what brand touchpoints are, and Joe alluded to that at the beginning of his introduction. But how your brand shows up across brand touchpoints and how consistent it is across those touchpoints is what really adds to and establishes brand recognition. Again, I said it precipitates action, so you want to get people to do things. Consistency is really important. How differentiated you are from your competition is also relies a lot on branding. So how you put yourself forward in design, tone of voice, etc., can differentiate you from people or brands or companies that do the same thing that you do. And then being memorable. So establishing a sense of recognition and then being able to be recalled by people and they will have a memory of your brand is really important, because then when you show up in different brand touch points to them, they can immediately recognize who you are, what you do, and make that connection. So why is this important to a RapidWeaver designer, and what is your role in all this? Designers and RapidWeaver designers are a number of different things to either themselves or their clients. And as I go through this presentation, I'm going to kind of be talking to both you if you're doing your own design or whether you're working for an external client. But a RapidWeaver designer is an educator, number one. So they have to educate their clients on what it is they do and how they do it. And also what is possible for them, for the client to achieve, what is possible, what maybe is not possible. They're also an influencer. So a client may have limiting beliefs, and a designer can come to a client and get them to think broader or be more ambitious. So educating them as to what is possible and influencing them. They're a business partner. So you really are, as a service provider to any brand, a business partner in their success or their failure. And again, you're a designer. So in that right and left brain aspect, you are bringing the creativity and the artistic eye to what their brand is. And then you're a shepherd and also a brand guardian. So one of the things as a design leader in my career that I've had to do is you have to influence your clients. You have to tell them what is right for their brand or what might be off-brand or what is aligned with the rest of their brand touchpoints. And if their website is singing the same song as the rest of their brand presence in the world, or whether they're trying to make it somehow different or off base, and influencing them and being a guardian of their brand for them. So brand touchpoints. What are brand touchpoints? Brand touchpoints are essentially wherever a brand shows up in the world. And that can be on the website, or it could be in content, it can be in marketing, it can be social media, it can be in real life, it can be in physical or retail, it can be on traditional broadcast media. So there are a number of different brand touch points. If you think about, let's say, Coca-Cola, wherever Coca-Cola shows up, and they are in every one of these brand touch points, you know immediately that it's Coca-Cola. And why? Because of color, because of their logo, because of their tone of voice, their type of photography, their product, all that sort of stuff. So that level of consistency across those brand touch points is what makes the recognition of Coke so strong. And every brand has to think about those things. Okay, let's jump right into the 9 elements of a brand design ecosystem. What's an ecosystem? An ecosystem is really a number of different pieces that all relate to each other, but also affect each other either positively or negatively. And that's very much what brand design elements are. If they all sing the same song and they all relate to each other and are used in concert with each other, they can create an ecosystem that it's really strong and very healthy. So what are some of the elements? Number 1, logo. And I put an S here because some companies have more than one logo. They may have a logo that is just a word mark, and they may have one that is a word mark with an icon. So sometimes companies have a number of different logos. But a logo communicates color, it communicates font, sometimes it has imagery or illustration in it, a great deal of strategic thought, and sometimes, in the cases of these large companies, hundreds if not millions of dollars go into designing the right identity, the right logo. Because logos mean something. There's a tremendous amount of psychology, both color psychology, shape psychology, that go into establishing a brand mark. Fonts, and I know that Joff just had a presentation about fonts. You probably know a whole lot about this right now, but fonts are a very important brand design element. All brands have at least 2 fonts, generally a primary font and a secondary font or a copy font. Some have more than that, but choosing a font or a pair of fonts to use for your brand and using those really consistently across everything that you do is really smart. And fonts can communicate things. There are serif fonts, there are sans serif fonts, there are antique fonts, there are modern fonts, there are contemporary fonts. Fonts have personalities. They can be masculine, feminine, they can be retro, they can be tech, they can be quirky, they can be serious. So choosing a font and establishing that as a brand element consistently is important. Color. There's a tremendous amount of psychology around color, and color choices are important for branding. Sorry, I'm getting alerts. Sorry, I just got totally sidetracked. Color. There are 2 senses that humans sense and remember more than anything else. Number 1 is smell. So smells are the most indelible memory for humans. Number 2 actually is color. So color can be incredibly emotionally evocative. So the choices and thought and strategy that goes into choosing colors is critical. And colors mean something to people. They can make you angry. They can make you hungry. They can make you calm. And so putting a lot of thought into color is important. And as you think about color for your clients, as you build web presences for them, you may personally like orange, but green might be a more appropriate color for the brand and the client that you're working for. And color palettes are generally part of a brand toolbox. So any brand will have anywhere from 4 to 5 colors. Generally, they have a light color, a dark color, a brand color, and a pop color, so something bright, and a neutral. Pattern and texture is also a brand design element that can be used to real great advantage and to establish recognition and that sense of familiarity with brands, like Louis Vuitton pattern at the top of this illustration, or the brushed metal Apple logo at the bottom. Burberry has a signature plaid. Paul Smith has a signature stripe. Brands can use patterns and textures as, if they repeat them, as a consistent aspect of their brand. Photography is another thing that in web design is really important. Choosing a style of photography and using that style of photography consistently can be a great element to facilitate brand recognition. And as many photographers as there are in the world, there are that many different photography styles. So you could choose a photography style that's black and white or retro or posterized or has a kind of quirky cropping. There's so many different ways that you can establish a brand look and feel using photography. And there's a lot of really, and this is a bugaboo of my own, but there's a lot of really bad stock photography out there. And so being lazy about choosing photography is the quickest way to ruin a brand perception. So really think about photography and the choices you're making and the types of styles that you're using. Illustration is the same thing, and it's actually a kind of an exploding trend in web design right now because of all that bad stock photography that's out there. Using illustration or an illustration style in iconography or as imagery can be a way to establish a really clear brand idea. And the cool thing about illustration is that it's very emotional. It has a million different styles that you can choose from, and it's very evocative and easy to recognize visually. So illustration is another thing that brands can use to identify themselves. Sound is another, and we don't think about this very much, but it used to be in the golden days of radio that everyone had a jingle. So, and there's not so much of that anymore, but people do use sound for branding. Think about like Intel Inside. They have that bum, 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 bum. And whenever you hear that, you think Intel Inside. So you can use sound for branding. You can use it as background sound. There are intros and outros to podcasts. There are lots of different ways that you can use sound as a reactive sound that happens in an interface or in an app. There are ways to use sound in branding. And this is an important one for RapidWeaver designers because RapidWeaver gives you a lot of freedom in how you lay out your web pages, and you're not confined to really strict themes. Layout design and using a distinctive layout design can really help you establish a brand look and feel. So layouts can be open and airy and minimalistic. They can be dense and complicated. They can be, they can utilize dramatic type or dramatic imagery or animations. There are lots of different ways to go about using layout as a brand design element. Tone of voice is another, and this generally shows up as copy. So how does the copy feel? Does it feel conversational? Does it feel demonstrative? Does it feel quirky? Does it feel amateurish? Does it feel serious? Having a tone of voice, a brand tone of voice, and establishing what that is, and then having it become the voice of a brand, having it show up that way in copy, marketing copy, content marketing copy, is another thing that brands use to establish a point of view. This is an illustration, and there are a lot of different ways to go about capturing these things, but brand guidelines are essentially documents that capture all of those 9 elements that I just went through of brand design in one place. Large corporations, their brand guidelines can be hundreds of pages long, or they could be like this example of West Virginia University. It can be a single page where you show the color palette of the brand, the logo or multiple logos, the word mark, the illustration style, the individual brand icon, the photography style, the layout style, put them all in one place. And as you can see how this is done on this page for West Virginia, it's very clear what the overall look and feel of this brand is. And if you're designing for them, when you have this palette of things to work with, you know exactly how to transport that and make their website look and feel like it sits with the brand. So establishing this kind of a collection of brand elements for yourself, or referencing it from your clients or asking for it from your clients, if they have it, hopefully. And if they don't, when you get into doing web design, you may find out there's aspects of this that they don't have or that you need, or there are questions of things that you have to add into the website. And not having those questions answered from the get-go can be time-consuming, and it can also be dangerous because you could push them off brand. This is the case study of Jason Resnick. Jason gave a presentation yesterday. Jason's a coder and a good friend of mine and Joe's, actually. And he has a really killer brand look and feel. Even as a coder, I'm very, very impressed with how well he has executed his brand design elements. And this is his website. He's chosen a very specific couple of fonts, a really tight color palette of black, white, red, and blue. He's chosen a very specific photography style, so he uses a posterized black and a bright color, either red or blue, or he uses grayscale photography. He has a distinctive layout, and it's very clear and sparse. The most important thing about what he does is that he does it very consistently. So not only does he have a very clear idea of what he's doing on his website, but when he moves into social media, Facebook, Twitter, his accounts, you can immediately tell that this account is his because he uses the same brand elements, the same color palette, the same photography. Whenever he even posts a photo on Facebook or on Twitter, he uses the same photo style. So even his gallery pages for the photos he uploaded feels like Jason's brand. So a really great example of consistency and a clear point of view in his visual brand design elements. And this is his Twitter account. And as you can tell, same thing. You immediately know by looking at it that this is Jason. I'm going to run through some very, very quickly some 12 web design trends. And these you just might want to think about as you do your design work. Some of them are continuations of trends that have happened over the last year, and some feel a little new. First of all, cards. Cards have been around for a while, probably started up around Pinterest 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a really great way to communicate a lot of imagery, but in a very organized type of way. It's also really great for responsive web design because these sort of mosaic imagery things reorganize themselves really nicely when you transfer to tablet or to mobile. So cards is a very cool kind of new and a design trend. And the one on the lower end is a really more of a gallery site. So for designers or illustrators or photographers, this sort of approach is really great for artistic or design brands or artists. Illegibility. Illegibility is not all trends are great. This is actually a tough trend that's been happening, and I'm sure you've probably noticed it on your mobile device. Brands have been moving away from heavy contrast in design. So colors have gotten closer and closer together. Background colors are starting to meld into the font colors. This is an example of Google's App Engine console. On the left is what it used to look like. On the right is what it looks like now. And as interfaces move to smaller and smaller devices, not having contrast makes it very difficult to read. And face it, we do have an aging population, and not everyone's eyes are as good as they used to be, at least mine aren't. And so having a decent amount of contrast in an interface, in a user interface, is important for people to be able to use it effectively. Minimalist design, another trend that's happening in web design. Very open, airy, communicates a level of sophistication. Things are very legible. It also gives you a lot of room to explore imagery, whether illustration or photography. WordPress. There's a lot of bad WordPress out there, and I'm sure you guys know this, and probably why you use RapidWeaver. But I have a personal vendetta against bad WordPress themes. So get out there, fight against the WordPress monster, and do better design, and try to move your clients away from the really crappy themes that are out there. Material design. Material design was developed by Google. It's pretty much of a reaction. It's a small image on the upper left-hand side is a mobile interface, and it shows the level of depth, round icons, heavy drop shadows, and space that was established on early mobile devices to aid navigation. And then the graphic design industry kind of moved very quickly and trendily over to flat design. And you saw flat design come across in the Microsoft operating system, Apple's operating system. And it kind of took over the web, very flat color. The problem with it is that it's kind of hard to navigate. It may be beautiful, but it's kind of hard to see the difference between elements. So Google has started to introduce a hybrid called material design, where they're starting to introduce more drop shadow shapes, more volumetric aspects of the user interface to make it just a little more usable. So material design is definitely a trend that's happening in web design. Rich animations. So using animations, either GIFs or the flash animations or any kind of video is definitely a huge trend that's going on in web design right now. This has also been made possible by the increase in bandwidth and the kind of more ubiquitousness of Retina displays. Again, we just had a presentation on type, but real dynamic typography has been made possible by Adobe Typekit and by Google Fonts, and also by, again, the higher resolution of web monitors, and also people, now projecting things onto very large, high-resolution screens in their home, or onto very tiny screens in their hand. Using dynamic typography and kind of exploded scale in photography in a very artistic way is one way to really create differentiation and create something remarkable for your clients, and something very dramatic. There's something very dramatic about like really, really large scale font statements. So this is a trend that you can take advantage of. More vibrant color. Vibrant color has been happening for a while, but it's continuing. And if your brand, your own brand, or your client's brand doesn't have a pop color, a bright color in their brand color palette, you might want to suggest that they add one. It's definitely an ongoing trend and can be utilized to really kind of add some life and energy to their sites. HD visuals are also becoming much more popular. Landing page video, high resolution imagery, bandwidth isn't as constrained as it used to be. Retina displays again, so people are really taking advantage of using HD visuals. And as we move into VR, I think it's even going to go farther. Optimize for mobile. This is nothing new, but as you design as RapidWeaver designers, make sure that you are optimizing for mobile and for responsive websites. Google ranks non-responsive websites lower in search, so it's really up to you for your clients' well-being and your own well-being to design mobile optimized sites. Illustration, again, I know we're getting there. Illustration, another way, it's definitely a trend showing up more and more and more in website design, and it is a way to add a level of personality and fun and energy to a website that goes beyond kind of the bad stock photography world that I think a lot of websites are really burdened by. This isn't so much of a trend as just a watch out or something to think about. There's user interface and there's user experience. And one is about navigation and moving and what you want me to do on a site. And user experience is really how you want me to feel on the site. And how you wed these two, you can go on websites and think about it this way and say, is this website really more about like, is there a hierarchy of where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do, and does it leave me feeling cold? Or is it all about fun, emotional, and excitement, but I don't know what to do? So having a really clear call to action, but also having a level of demonstrative emotion around what you do and wedding those two appropriately together is another thing to pay attention to. This is something to think about as you work with clients. It's really not about costs, it's about investment. And you can use this argument with them when you're trying to get them to approve budgets. But there's a great quote from the CEO of Jaguar, and it said, if you think the cost of good design is expensive, you should see the cost of bad design. And while design and web design is and can be expensive, branding design can be expensive, it is an investment, and there's two main reasons why it's an important investment. Number one, if you do it right, you only have to do it once. And if you don't do it right the first time, the cost of fixing it down the line can be very expensive. And the reason why I say that is because we have so many different brand touch points now, and our brands show up in so many different areas. If you design your brand in a piecemeal fashion, and it doesn't sing together as a unit, and it doesn't really make sense as a unit. And as you design Twitter, you do one thing, and as you design a website, you do another, and as you design a Facebook page, it's another. The cost and time of changing it down the line can be really expensive. And this is even more important, which is, as you have a brand that proliferates itself on the web and looks very disparate in different places, you are losing brand equity. So every time a person interacts with that brand, if they don't get that immediate recognition and that recall of what your brand is, you are losing the opportunity to cement them to you. So by being fractured, you are losing brand equity. So make the investment, advocate for people to make the investment as they go in. And so with that, you can be the 800-pound gorilla of brand design. 9 design elements. On my website, please visit philipvandusen.com, and you can download the 9 design elements. I have a mini ebook checklist with those, and I'm got a video coming out at the end of next week on the 12 design trends if you want to see that again. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Joe, and thank you guys so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. So that's it. One more slide. Thank you. And visit me at philipvandusen.com. I'd love to interact with you on your brand or hear about your successes or challenges. I offer one-to-one consulting. And actually, I'm offering a $75 off an hour consulting fee to the people in the RapidWeaver conference. So with that, I will turn off my screen sharing, and we can go from there. Give me just a second. All righty. We good, Joe? I can't hear you, Joe.
Every single time I forget to unmute my mic after the presentation's over. Man, I mute it so that people aren't hearing me during the thing, and then boop, forget.
No worries.
Okay. Hey, at least I remember before I got 30 seconds into it this time. Hey, so thank you. Everyone in the chat room was just saying, like, wow, you are killing it. They were just like, I say that was the award winning for most polished presentation. I love the slides, the imagery, right? You could tell you're just a brand connoisseur, right? So, thank you very much. That was such amazing presentation. Really, there was one question that someone had. They wanted, let me hold, oops, where was it? Oops. Copied it. Oh, let's see. I would love to hear your thoughts around branding when there's one company brand with multiple individually branded products. Mm-hmm. Okay. So trying to get company plus product line, like how do you merge all of that into the same storyline? You can approach it in a couple different ways. I did a lot of work with P&G. There are companies that are families of brands. So P&G owns some of the largest consumer packaged goods things, Tide, Febreze, list goes on and on and on. And P&G itself has a very quiet brand. Like its parent brand doesn't really show up very much, but all of its individual product brands do. Yep. There's that kind of strategic approach, which is we are an umbrella family of individual brands, and they put all their money into establishing the brand presences of all those individual brands rather than the parent. But there are companies that are they rely much more on the parent brand than they do the sub brands. And for instance, like PepsiCo, actually. Pepsi is like Coke in the fact that they put a lot of money into the parent brand of the soft drink. But Pepsi owns, they own Lay's potato chips, Doritos, Totitos. They own about 50 other, Honest Tea. They own, zillions of different brands. Taco Bell. Don't they own Taco Bell?
Yeah, but they don't, and the Yum brands. And so they put their money into those individual brands, and they don't have to actually web them. Now, I'll speak about one other example of this, I did a lot of work for Safeway. Safeway is the largest grocer on the West Coast. You probably know them. And I developed a lot of their private label brands. So their private label food brands are competing in the same spaces as national food brands. And there are brands that they brand Safeway that look kind of like have a Safeway look and feel to them.
Yeah.
And then there are brands that are much more premium or natural and organic that don't look like the Safeway brand. And that was a very choiceful thing to do. They chose on their more generic, middle of the road, middle price point food brands to have them sit and refer back to the Safeway brand because that gave credibility to the grocer. And then they also developed food brands that they tried to divorce entirely from Safeway because if they didn't, people were going to think of them as a cheaper brand or not as good or not worth the money that they are Stouffer's or something like that. Yeah. So I'm not sure that totally answered your question, but as a brand guardian, when you go into a client, if their sub-products need to refer back to the parent brand in a really meaningful way, and they are gaining credibility and also gaining recognition and benefiting from the parent brand, then you want to win them together. But if for some reason the parent brand's philosophy, mission, whatever, isn't going to positively affect that secondary brand, then it's okay to divorce them. Really.
Cool. Excellent. Man, questions are all of a sudden popping in. Everyone's got all kinds of questions now. Let's see. How do we convince clients about the importance of good photography? Many of my clients don't want to pay and they want to buy cheap photography.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around that?
One thing I would say about photography is that we are in a period of time where choosing really great photography is there's no excuse anymore. You can go on Flickr and search for Creative Commons photography and choose killer looking photography around a particular style that would cost your client nothing and is free to use for commercial purposes. It's really more the time and energy that you spent curating the photography. Getting clients to pay for custom photography is fantastic. I love that, of course. But if they can't, you can buy stock photography that is really cheap, but also still really good. And there's also a lot of photography and photographers that are offering their portfolios up very inexpensively. To answer the first part of your question, which is like, how do you advocate for clients to pay attention to it? Show them a lot of really bad photography and how it creates a generic experience. And one of the ways to do that the best way to do it is to show them their competition. If their competition is doing it better than they are, the best thing to do is to put it in front of them and say, your competition's doing this and you are looking like Joe Generic. Get your game together, and then show them some examples of how people are doing it really right. There's no equal to putting visuals in front of a brand or brand representative and saying, this is what you need to be like, and this is what you are. So illustrating it is the best way to kind of like win that argument.
Sweet. Let's see. If a client has a terrible logo, is it better to provide a totally new logo, or is it better to take elements of the bad logo and kind of transition towards a better logo?
Depends on how bad it is. There's some logos that are just beyond help. But the other thing I would say is that it also depends on how much brand equity do they have in the old logo. So if it's a fairly large company, are they 10, they $100, $20 million a year, whatever, how much history do they have in that logo? How much recognition do they have in that logo? If they have a great deal of brand recognition in their current customers, or people are, when they see that logo, they know it's them immediately, and they need to maintain all of that audience, all that consumer base, then you have to evolve in a more stepped fashion. If you don't have a huge customer base and the logo is really terrible, and you can get them to a much better place. Sometimes it's good just to make the jump. But even the biggest brands, I mean, when FedEx bought Kinko's, FedEx had a 5-year plan where they incorporated the Kinko's logo into the FedEx logo, and then over time they divorced the two from each other. There was FedEx, then there was FedEx Kinko's, then there was FedEx Office, and then it was like this whole progression plan. And so sometimes staged evolutions is the way to go.
Okay. Here's an interesting one. Is brand typography dying, like Starbucks and Nike removing the font or name from the logo?
Most companies that have, they generally start off by associating a word mark and a brand mark. And when I say a brand mark, I mean like an icon, like the swoosh. Mm-hmm. And they start off wedding those two together. They establish a long history and a lot of recognition in those two pieces together before they start to pull them apart. Nike did it fairly early on, but they were so successful and they put so much money into advertising around that people got it immediately. It was also a very easily recognizable icon.
Yeah.
But I would say that when you design an icon for a company, you generally do it as a unit, as a lockup, as it's called. And then over time, you can start to use the icon independently as people know what it is.
Cool. All right, last question. Let's see. I have a client with a huge stable client list. His name and logo describe a very small part of his overall business. Since it was made 20 years ago, would you suggest to change just the logo or the name too?
If the name is holding it back in history and making it feel archaic, I would suggest changing the name too. If the logo is not representative of the larger brand whole now, I would definitely recommend updating it, because there's no reason why you keep the longer they keep it, as they grow and as their brands and their business proliferates and gets larger, the bigger problem it's going to be to change it later. So if they are going to continue to, be large in these other aspects of their business, and this logo is only still representing this small sliver of what was the very first part of it, then by all means there should be an evolution. Because otherwise, as they get bigger or as those businesses become more successful and the old business gets smaller and less important, then that disconnect gets greater and greater. And then eventually when they do have to change, and they will have to change, it becomes that much more painful, and they risk that much more loss in brand equity.
Wow. Awesome insight. So, actually, I would like, last question. Someone asked where can they best contact you for consultancy?
Sure.
So I'm assuming it's just on your website you have a contact form, but let them know.
Yeah, philipvandusen.com is my website, and I have a contact form on there. I have consulting fees if you want individual consulting. I also I have my company is a virtual agency, so I don't have a brick and mortar office that I have to pay for, but I have very high level branding partners, everything from video to strategy to web design to photography and video. So just about any brand project comes my way I can handle, but the best place to contact me is through my website, and there's all sorts of different places there to get my email address, etc.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Phil. I really appreciate it, and everyone absolutely loved your presentation. You actually knocked it out of the park. Thank you, Phil.
Cool. Thank you.
We'll
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.